Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference. My name is Jessica Dalzell, and I am with the Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance at Ohio EPA. I will be moderating the What to Expect During a Surface Water Inspection session today. Ohio EPA's 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference has 24 sessions over 2 weeks. Registration information and the conference agenda are located on the Ohio EPA Conference webpage. Before we get started today, we would like to point your attention to one of today's environmental fun facts. Enjoying this virtual training opportunity? Continue learning with Ohio EPA's webinars. At Ohio EPA's events page, you can search by keyword and filter by topic. The Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance runs an In Your Community and Technical webinar series. The community series focuses on local level environmental issues and empowers leaders to promote environmental stewardship. The technical series covers a variety of topics, including environmental compliance and reporting, with the goal of providing a better understanding of the technical side of environmental issues. You can scan the QR code on this slide to access our events page and sign up for your next webinar or training opportunity. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, John Schmidt from the Division of Surface Water. John has been with Ohio EPA for 26.5 years, serving as a permitting engineer and inspector in Ohio EPA's Division of Materials and Waste Management and Division of Surface Water. He's also been a compliance assistance specialist with the Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention. John currently reviews and recommends PTIs, reviews and writes NPDES permits, and conducts inspections of municipal, industrial, and semi-public facilities in Geauga and Stark counties and special projects throughout Northeast Ohio. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jessica, for that introduction. As Jessica indicated, my name is John Schmidt, and I'm a reviewing engineer up in Ohio EPA's Northeast District Office up in Twinsburg, Ohio. And I kind of want to start this off with a polling question. So, have you ever participated in an inspection with Ohio EPA, surface water or otherwise? And it'll just be a simple yes or no question. All right, thanks, John. About a minute here to respond.
All right, we're almost at 100%. I'll give it a few more seconds to let those last stragglers vote. All right, John, and I'll go ahead and close this poll and share the results for you.
All righty. So it looks like about roughly about 3/4 of you have had an inspection, and about a quarter or so have not had an inspection. So inspections by Ohio EPA don't have to be scary. The big thing is just kind of having a plan and knowing what's going to be expected when Ohio EPA does knock on your door. So with that, let's kind of go over some learning objectives. First objective here is an overview of the inspection process for wastewater and stormwater within Ohio EPA's surface water program, identifying what Ohio EPA's inspectors are looking for when they come out to do an inspection, how you as the regulated community can prepare for that inspection, identify common violations often found during an inspection, and the do's and don'ts during and following the inspection. To make sure that you have a good interaction here with Ohio EPA. Ohio EPA's inspections were kind of laid out. The different divisions in EPA each have their own inspectors, and most of our inspections occur out of one of our 5 district offices throughout the state: Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and Central District Office. There's kind of a layout there of a map of what county you happen to be located in as far as what district offices will service you. Our main environmental divisions are Division of Surface Water, Drinking and Groundwaters, Materials and Waste Management, which would be the solid waste and infectious waste folks, and our DIR group, which is our hazardous waste and our legacy hazardous waste group. Our Division of Air Pollution Control, and the Environmental Response and Revitalization, that's what covers the hazardous waste and the legacy waste. Business may be inspected by different inspectors presenting different programs at the same time or separately. If an inspection occurs by one group and they notice something, they will likely go back and benchmark with the other inspectors. So one inspection may trigger additional inspections depending upon what's found by the initial inspection. And you may be seen by 2 or more inspectors from different programs that may visit at the same time. We kind of refer to that as a multimedia inspection. That's very common with complaint inspections. All right, how are inspections conducted? Based on US EPA grant commitments and Ohio EPA goals, we have the most common that we're going to have is going to be our routine inspections. And they are for non-stormwater NPDES permits. We kind of break things up into large facilities. Majors is what we call them, typically once every 2 years. And smaller facilities, which are folks under 1 million gallons per day, typically once per permit cycle, which is typically once every 5 years. Within our stormwater program, if you are a community that is a large or medium separate storm sewer community, it's simply once every 5 years. Smaller MS4 communities is typically once every 7 years. For construction sites, if you're applying for the statewide construction stormwater permit and it's larger than 5 acres in industrial facilities, the state typically gets out to see about 10% of those folks per year. And if they are smaller construction sites, they typically try to get out to see them about once every 5% coverage per year. All right. We also go out and inspect complaints. Shortly after we get a complaint, we will typically go out and follow up on that inspection. That may involve multiple inspections and multimedia inspections where you may see inspectors from different programs. I do want to kind of cover a word here about significant noncompliance. US EPA has a definition of what significant noncompliance is. There's a 1995 memorandum on that defines what significant noncompliance is. Things like missed milestones, being significantly over your effluent limits or loadings in your permit. And it's typically ongoing, occurring in multiple months in a row or more than so many events in a quarter. In those cases, you will have much more frequent inspections until you return to compliance. And then we also have special inspection initiatives that US EPA and Ohio EPA may decide to sponsor. Targeted groups in the past may include folks like mobile home parks and salvage yards and active construction sites. Inspections can be scheduled in advance or unannounced per division policy. It's important to note that most complaint-driven inspections will be unannounced. Many times we will like to try to coordinate with you, especially if there are significant health and safety items that we need to go through before we are allowed back on your site. A little bit about the inspection process. This is a typical inspection when we do an in-person inspection. We'll have an opening meeting, kind of explain the purpose of our inspection, and introduction with the folks that we're interacting with. We'll do a facility walkthrough. We'll do a process focused inspection. We'll kind of follow the wastewater as it's generated through the treatment process to final discharge. We will then review any on-site records, maybe some items that are not required to be submitted to us in advance, but are maintained at the site. We'll review that information. We'll then have a closing meeting that we'll kind of discuss of the findings of the inspection and what to expect in a letter. and then we will follow up with a letter. It could be a compliance inspection letter, could be a notice of violation, could be multiple letters. It just depends upon the specific situation and the site. A word about virtual site visits. This is something that we did during the pandemic here between 2020 and 2022. We are currently not doing them. I do have this fact sheet referenced under the combined fact sheets handout there. And, you know, with the pandemic and fall kind of coming around here and possible resurgence of variants and stuff, that we may possibly return to that. It just all kind of depends upon what word we get from the CDC and the Ohio Department of Health and our director. But I will just kind of put this out here that this is something that we were doing. Virtual site visit is a little bit different, and the inspector will contact you to figure out if a virtual visit is appropriate rather than an in-person inspection. A little bit of a difference is we'll oftentimes kind of have a pre-meeting by phone with the facility to kind of work out media logistics, especially if you're in an area where internet may be spotty, connectivity and streaming issues. Who's going to participate both at the facilities end and Ohio EPA's end in the virtual visit? What documents that we will need beforehand, before conducting the visit, typically gets emailed to us beforehand. What other documents beyond like a site map and that type of thing. If we need to look at some of the records that we would normally look at while we're out there, we may request them to be emailed to us so we can review them. The inspection type, whether it's a complaint or an annual inspection, a routine inspection associated with the renewal of your permit, et cetera. Any contingencies we want to work out beforehand, like what happens if a call gets dropped or lighting's a problem or it's a noisy environment, and minimizing camera movement. How photographs will be handled during the virtual visit, information to review prior to us conducting the virtual site visit, and oftentimes conducting a trial run just to kind of see to make sure that we can kind of work out the logistics with streaming and that type of thing, and then actually scheduling the virtual site visit. Whether it's a virtual inspection or an in-person inspection before an Ohio EPA inspection, to make your interaction go smoothly, have a plan. As a facility, it's important to delegate kind of within your company if Ohio EPA shows up on your doorstep, whether announced or unannounced, who's going to talk to the inspector, and more importantly, is there a backup? Murphy's Law being what it is the one day that your environmental health and safety person decides to take a vacation day is the day that Ohio EPA is going to show up. So you want to make sure that you kind of have a backup plan, an alternate person to talk to who's going to be familiar with the processes and where the information is located, and they can speak with Ohio EPA. So also, you know, is that person going to be the plant manager, EH&S manager, pollution control equipment operator? If it's a public entity, maybe superintendent or utilities director. You want to have a camera that works. The inspector may be taking pictures. You can request copies of those pictures, but you may also want to take pictures of your own that Ohio EPA is taking a picture of. Having the person that's going to speak with Ohio EPA and their backup person, that they need to know how to describe your operations, waste, discharges, et cetera, to the inspector, and knowing where all the supporting documentation is kept, knowing where permits are kept, knowing what's contained within those permits, and again, knowing where the environmental compliance records are actually maintained. So you're not like rifling through somebody else's office trying to find something when Ohio EPA shows up. When the inspector arrives, you want to find out why the inspection is being done. In many cases, it's routine. If you're a permitted entity, request the inspector for identification and ask for the inspector's business card. We will have both. Tell the inspector about safety requirements of your plant. If there is any special equipment that we will have, we typically will have things like a hard hat and safety glasses and steel-toed work boots. But if there's something above and beyond that, it will be important for us to know that. Take a deep breath and relax. Our focus is going to be on compliance and compliance assistance. We're really not out there to get you. We really want to help you be in compliance with your rules, because if you're in compliance with rules, life is good. Answer the inspections questions. You don't want to guess or make things up. If you don't have an answer, just say so, and future follow-up is going to be acceptable. Say, well, you know, I don't have access to that, and I'm going to have to follow up with that, and that's a perfectly acceptable response to give to Ohio EPA. Okay, a little bit about our Surface Water Regulatory Authority. First and foremost, comes from the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES system. It is essentially the permit to authorize you to discharge the waters of the state. Under those categories, we have point sources, which is kind of end of pipe, classic end of pipe discharge to the environment. That includes like the water resource recovery facilities, otherwise known as the sewage treatment plants. Industrial facilities that include both processed water and non-processed water, like non-contact cooling water, and other discharges of pollutants reaching waters of the state through an end of pipe. We also have stormwater. Stormwater kind of falls into like one of three categories. One is industrial stormwater. That's kind of based on your standard industrial classification code. That's your 4-digit code that your facility has with the U.S. Department of Labor. Construction sites, if you disturb 1 acre or greater, or are part of a larger development that is larger than 1 acre. So even though your individual lot might be less than an acre, if it's part of a subdivision that is greater than 1 acre, then it may be subject to the construction stormwater permit. Municipal separate stormwater systems, MS4 communities also will have stormwater permits. We also have two broad categories of permits. You can either write individual permits that is just for your facility, or you may qualify for a general statewide permit. A classic example of the statewide permit would be the construction stormwater permit that people will apply for coverage for by applying for a notice of intent to be covered under that permit. We have many other general permits as well that are on our website. We also issue permits to install. If you want to build some type of a treatment system, that requires a permit to install. You're going to install sewers, sewer mains, pump stations, modifications to your treatment system, industrial pre-treatment systems, surface water impoundments, both to install them and to close surface water impoundments. Also, I want to make a note here that non-discharging treatment systems like a classic tile field septic system that's under 1,000 gallons per day design may be delegated to our local health departments under something called our small flows program. If you're not sure if your county participates in the small flow program, just contact your local Ohio EPA district office or your local health department and ask them. I know up here in Northeast Ohio, I have two counties, Geauga and Stark. Geauga County does not participate in the small flows program at this time, but Stark County does. So it just depends. We also regulate indirect discharges, which is industrial wastewater, which is discharged into central sewers. If you have wastewater that needs specialized treatment before it is allowed to be discharged to centralized sewers. Some sewer authorities have approved pre-treatment programs that Ohio EPA regulates. Larger communities like up here in Northeast Ohio, like Northeastern Ohio Regional Sewer District has their own approved program. City of Akron has their own program. But many smaller communities do not have an approved pre-treatment program, and in that case, the indirect discharge permits are issued by Ohio EPA, which we do coordinate with those local sewer authorities. We also regulate wetlands and stream modifications. Goes through the Army Corps of Engineers usually initially, and then works with the Water Quality Certification Program within Ohio EPA. Also, the biosolids program, if you're doing land application of industrial sludge and biosolids, and we do follow up complaint investigations as we need. We're up to our next live polling question. What NPDES permit records should you be able to either have available for inspection or send to Ohio EPA prior to a virtual site visit as applicable? Could it be a wastewater and or stormwater process flow diagram, training records on a stormwater pollution prevention plan, a discharging sanitary wastewater treatment plant logbook, stormwater BMP inspection logs and annual certifications, or all of the above? I'll kind of give you here about a minute to answer.
Thanks, John. And just a reminder that you will need to answer all poll questions to receive your CEUs for today, so please go ahead and respond. All right, John, and here are the results.
All right, well, it looks like most of you answered correctly. Really, any of these documents you should have available for inspection as applicable to your particular site. So again, some of you may not have like industrial stormwater monitoring obligations. So, I could see where somebody would just simply put the logbook or maybe stormwater BMPs and certifications if that's all you happen to have. But really, all of these could be. You want to make sure that you have any of these as applicable to your individual authorizing document. All right, I kind of want to touch briefly here on some commonly regulated wastewater sources, some which you may be aware of and some that you may not be aware of. So commonly regulated wastewater sources here can include spent solutions from a plating operation, cooling water, contact and non-contact cooling water, equipment cleaning. Many people will be cleaning equipment out in a parking lot and allowing it to run to the storm sewer. Not acceptable. It's got to be collected and treated through a wastewater treatment plant. Rinse waters, classic municipal sewage, process solutions. There is a picture of a classic sanitary package plant at a company. Water treatment backwash. That backwash cannot be just simply run to a storm drain. It has to be treated through a wastewater treatment plant or put into a holding tank and taken off to a larger wastewater treatment plant. Construction stormwater and industrial stormwater. One that's commonly missed here is air pollution control equipment blowdown. So if you've got things like blowdown from compressors and that type of thing, that stuff should be collected and directed to your wastewater treatment plant. Purge and flush waste. General housekeeping is a common one too, especially if you have an older manufacturing building with floor drains in it. Know where those floor drains go. They should be plumbed to your wastewater treatment system and not to your stormwater discharge. So I want to talk here a little about surface water program inspections. Again, when inspections occur, we may get something called a site evaluation. If you are changing your wastewater sources or adding new sources, contact your Ohio EPA district office and ask. That may trigger a site evaluation to see if there's something that needs to change with your treatment system. We do have routine inspections for point sources. It depends upon, again, as I mentioned earlier, once every 2 to 5 years, depending upon compliance history. Note, non-compliance means more frequent inspections. So if you remain in compliance, you're likely to see us less often. We do go out frequently for construction stormwater permits, especially during the busy construction season here in the summertime. Complaints as needed. What do we look for? We're assessing compliance with terms and conditions of your authorizing documents. That could include a permit to install, NPDES permit, indirect discharge permit, water quality certification. It could also include if you have findings and orders with Ohio EPA. Changes or proposed changes in waste streams, both in volume or chemistry, like strength of the wastewater. Any treatment systems modifications we're going to be looking for. Does Ohio EPA conduct sampling during an inspection? That's a common question that we get asked. Rarely, but occasionally we may do some sampling with a complaint, but normally with our routine inspections, we do not. We rely upon you to do the sampling and to submit the data to Ohio EPA. If you've got questions or problems or you're having difficulty understanding something, please communicate with us. Again, communication generates trust and understanding between both the regulator and the facilities that we regulate. Again, once we show up at a site, or if we're doing a virtual visit by phone, we'll have a pre-inspection meeting or a phone call. Typical for routine inspections, we'll kind of discuss any personal protective equipment requirements you might have for your facility, review any compliance information, verify flow diagrams and site maps to make sure that we have the most current information, and review on-site information. We'll also kind of discuss kind of the purpose of our visit while we're out there. At that point, then we'll request what's called a facility walkthrough. We may look at permit records and compliance beforehand for virtual visits. If we're going out to do a site face-to-face visit, we'll look for this afterwards. We kind of expect a process-based inspection. So we're going to, for industrial facilities, operates that generate the wastewater or stormwater are going to be looked at. We're going to look at any conveyance systems, drains, sumps, pumps, pits, tanks, sanitary or storm sewer lines, site drainage, and outfalls we're going to look at. Treatment systems, the function and maintenance of those systems. We're going to also look at any ancillary operations that kind of go with your wastewater treatment, like sludge treatment and management. We're going to look at sampling procedures that you may have, like calibration records, maybe on some of your handheld equipment that you may use out at the site, calibration records on things of like your sampler, proper sample storage. Is it collected at the right temperature? Is it maintained at the right temperature? Is it collected in the right types of containers? Stormwater management, we're going to be looking for records that you guys maintain at the site that does not get submitted into Ohio EPA each month, like your discharge visual inspections, facility inspections, any annual reports or certifications, training records, and any plan updates that you've had. We're also going to be looking at general housekeeping. Typically, like with stormwater management, you're going to identify standard operating procedures to minimize your contamination of stormwater. If you have written SOPs, are those SOPs actually being followed? Common surface water violations. These are kind of some of the common ones that we kind of come across, and I kind of want to kind of share them with you so you can kind of look and see if maybe there's some tweaking that you might need to do at your facility. First and foremost, failure to obtain an NPDES permit or a permit to install. So if you have an indirect to sewers or direct to waters of the state without wastewater or stormwater without a permit. So if you have added a piece of pollution control equipment at your site for treatment of your wastewater, that will typically require a permit to install. Do you discharge the surface waters of the state? Again, do you have an NPDES permit for that? There's no really grandfathering from that. So again, just because you've had a discharge to the pond out back for 50 years and you've been under the radar screen with an NPDES permit, if we find out that you have a discharge and you don't have an NPDES permit, we're going to require that you get one. Installing new wastewater treatment equipment or wastewater conveyance sewers without a PTI. I want to refer you to the combined fact sheets handout. Within that is permit to install requirements for sanitary sewer projects. Even private sewers within a complex is still subject to requiring a permit to install from Ohio EPA. So again, I would kind of recommend that you take a look at that fact sheet to kind of see if your process wastewater line is going to require a permit to install from Ohio EPA or not. Process changes without notifying Ohio EPA. Again, we have several facilities, industrial facilities that have what are called categorically regulated waste streams. They're regulated by the federal US EPA under 40 CFR 400 through 499. Many times the facility will initially not have categorically regulated waste streams, like maybe they have that stuff hauled out by truck, and they decide that they're going to send it to their wastewater treatment system instead. And that was a change that would require notifying Ohio EPA, so we are aware of it, so we can modify and update your NPDES permit accordingly. Failure to apply and obtain a stormwater permit. Again, if you are disturbing more than 1 acre or you are part of a larger development that is greater than 1 acre, if you are going to be ripping up the ground with some type of construction project, then that typically requires a stormwater permit. Also, you may not qualify for a stormwater permit no exposure exclusion if you've applied for it. Again, if you look under the combined fact sheets handout, I have a US EPA fact sheet on the conditional no exposure exclusion for industrial activity. that you may want to take a look at. Many people think that they qualify for that no exposure exclusion, but find out that they actually don't. Discharging processed wastewater to a septic system, dry well, cesspool, or other injection well. That will get you in trouble with our drinking water folks and our groundwater folks, because you may have a class 5 injection well, which is probably a path you do not want to walk down. Other common surface water violations include with sampling. Failure to provide sample results for permitted outfalls. Your permit is going to have requirements to submit data at a certain frequency. Some things may be required to be monitored daily or weekly or a couple times a week or once a month or once a quarter. Make sure that the sampling gets conducted in accordance with those. Failure to ensure proper sampling, like failure to have proper preservation type, sample methods, records, and analysis. I do want to make a point on this. Keep in mind that for NPDES permit reporting, sample methods must follow 40 CFR 136 methods. So keep in mind there are lots of US EPA methods out there that are for different programs. So you may be monitoring something to satisfy the folks in our hazardous waste group, and they have to follow a certain method, but those methods are oftentimes not authorized under 40 CFR 136 for NPDES permit reporting. So that's one that we come across quite commonly. Failure to provide notification for exceeding permit limits, upsets, or bypasses. If you have an individual permit, this is typically covered in Part 3, Item 12 of your permit, that you need to notify Ohio EPA when you exceed a permit limit or loading or have an upset or a bypass. Monitoring instruments, calibration. Again, typically, if you have handheld instrumentation that you're sampling for out at your site for things like dissolved oxygen or pH or chlorine residual, those instruments need to be properly calibrated before they're used. Failure to have an operator of record. If you have a discharging sanitary system, we have to have a licensed operator see the site a minimum number of visits per week and a minimum amount of time per week. It's typically a condition of either your permit to install or an NPDES permit. And failure to notify if you have a change in either the operator or the permit holder, you're supposed to notify Ohio EPA with a new operator of record notification form. Other common violations include failure to operate and maintain the wastewater treatment system, failure to have equipment calibration records, or failure to follow equipment manufacturer's maintenance. Again, you've got your wastewater treatment system is probably one of the most expensive pieces of infrastructure that you own. We have seen a lot of blowers get ruined because people don't follow the schedule for checking the oil and maintaining the oil. Just like a car, the engine will lock up if you don't properly maintain it. Blowers will do the same thing. If you have a sanitary plant, there are records you have to keep at the site, and that's detailed in the Ohio Administrative Code 3745-7-09. It includes a copy of the permit, a logbook, operation maintenance manuals, operator licenses, and a contract for service contract, if applicable, records that you have to maintain at the site. For the stormwater permit, common errors that we see is the stormwater plan is not updated. It's supposed to be checked and verified and updated as needed, typically checked at least once a year. Stormwater discharge visual inspections, these are typically done quarterly. Facilities inspections, where you're kind of checking to make sure that you're following best management practices, is typically done quarterly. And then there's an annual report that's supposed to be done, and you're supposed to have training for employees that are tasked with carrying out the stormwater plan and maintaining records of those trainings of those personnel. Operator hour reporting for like our discharging sanitary plants. There is an app that is on Ohio EPA e-Business Center that operators are supposed to be reporting their staffing hours through. It's been kind of optional up until July of 2020, and then at this point it's now been mandatory. So they need to be submitting those operating hours through that app at the Ohio EPA e-Business Center. Other stormwater violations, fair non-implementation of best management practices, essentially not following what you said you were going to do in your stormwater plan. Unauthorized non-stormwater discharge like vehicle and equipment, wash water, or leachate. That's not authorized by your stormwater permit if you have a stormwater permit only NPDES permit. Improper connections, we kind of call those non-stormwater connections connected to the stormwater system, like floor drains. You want to make sure that those are identified and replumbed accordingly. So another poll question. It's poll time again. Okay, what are common things to look for during a surface water inspection? Would it be an NPDES or indirect discharge permit compliance, a permit to install compliance, changes or proposed changes in waste streams, any treatment system modifications, or all the above? We'll give you here about a minute to answer.
Thanks, John. And we'll wait a little bit longer on this one. I know we cut you off a little bit short last one. So just a reminder to please answer this poll question if you are applying for CEUs. If you don't get a chance to answer this poll, please make sure that you're chatting in to let us know that you are paying attention. We'll give it about 20 more seconds here. All right. We'll give it 3 more seconds and then I'll go ahead and close it down for you, John.
Okay.
All righty, here you are.
All right. Well, it looks like the vast majority of you did respond with all the above. Really, any of those things could be looked at during a surface water inspection, depending upon what type of permit that you have. So again, maybe a few folks that kind of responded with just a PTI compliance or NPDES permit compliance. Again, it just kind of depends upon what authorizations you happen to have. But realistically, any of those could be fair game to look at as applicable. All right. So some helpful hints. Ohio EPA's goal really here is compliance, not enforcement. If you're in compliance with your authorizing documents, all is well with the world. You're happy, I'm happy, the fish are happy, life is good. So that's really our goal here is compliance, not enforcement. Enforcement uses a lot of resources on your end, uses a lot of resources on our end, and money is just too scarce. I would much rather see that money being going to compliance rather than paying attorneys. Make record keeping as simple as possible. The more simple it is, the more likely it is to be followed. Develop a pattern for record keeping and reports. You know, if you can take a calendar and mark it up with all of your obligations of your authorizing documents so you know when things are due. And also foster a good relationship with neighbors. That way you won't have people looking for the slightest misstep that you do to file a complaint. So a good relationship with your neighbors goes a long way. Responding to the inspection, what you want to do. You do want to contact your inspector if you have any questions about the inspection letter or notice of violation. If there's something you don't understand or you're worried about like what type of detail to provide in the response, please reach out to the inspector. They can let you know on what they're looking for. If you notice any facts in the inspection letter or notice of violation are wrong and you want to get them corrected, please reach out to your inspector. I have corrected some letters where I've had some factually inaccurate information, and I have not had a problem with making correction to it as needed. If you don't understand what is needed to correct the violations, please reach out to the inspector. If you have questions on the compliance process or need more time to respond, it's important that you get back a response within the time frame that they're asking for. You want to have a list of what things you've done. If there's some stuff that you need a little more time to complete, you want to indicate that you're working on those and when you could expect to have those done, and when Ohio EPA can expect a follow-up letter when you do get those things that you haven't completed completed. What you do not want to do is ignore the inspection letter or notice of violation. The letters will get grouchier and they will get more frequent. And you will march, if you have a notice of violation, you will start marching down the path towards enforcement. And that's usually a path that nobody wants to go to, neither you nor Ohio EPA. You don't want to wait till the last day to respond to the correspondence because you may find out there's a lot of stuff you may have to get, or you may have to get some sampling done. And again, you don't want to be in that position where you have to respond back that most of the stuff that Ohio EPA is asking for, you're not being able to get to because you're waiting on the laboratory. You don't want to cut off communication with the inspector. They are a resource to help you resolve those violations. Again, we really are here to help you. If there's something that you don't understand, we really are here to help you through the process and get you back on the road to compliance. With responding to the inspection, most violations are resolved without any legal actions or fines. You want to take steps to avoid enforcement by resolving violations in a timely manner. Again, Ohio EPA is going to look at reasonable timeframes to get things completed. Again, we understand also too, especially now with the whole COVID situation, and there's a lot of supply chain issues on things. Again, you want to kind of detail that out in your response. If you have a notice of violation and you've addressed all the outstanding issues that were cited in the notice of violation, you'll get a resolution of violation or ROV letter. It's only issued if a notice of violation was issued and it identifies how the violations were resolved for the public record. And those also go into our electronic document system, or EDOC. So anybody who is doing a review on your compliance history of your facility can see that you may have had a violation letter, but then it was resolved. I want to point out some compliance resources for you. And not just because I was one of these folks here for a couple of years, but I really do find them an excellent resource. Office of Compliance Assistance and Pollution Prevention, or OCAP. There's an 800 number that you can contact statewide. There are staff in each one of our district offices. They really are here to help. If you are a small business, typically under 100 employees, they can kind of act like free consulting with you. Their services are free and they're confidential. So you can reach out with them and confess sins to them that they do not share with the folks on the other side of the aisle in enforcement and compliance. Under very rare circumstances, does that confidentiality get broken? We also have a customer support center that you can see about emailing any questions and you'll get a response back, or you can certainly reach out to any one of our 5 district offices. Important inspection takeaways I want to cover with this is understanding your NPDES permit, including water use and wastewater generation practices, compliance schedule requirements, and testing requirements, i.e. read your permit, know what's in it. Know locations of all your sewers and drains and where they go. If you don't know, you may need to find out by doing some dye testing. Have records available documenting treatment management and disposable waste streams, including sludges. Make sure that that information is available and make sure that both the primary contact and the backup contact are aware where they're at, so you're not trying to search around for them when Ohio EPA shows up. Avoid surprises and noncompliance by preparing and educating employees regarding standard operating procedures. If you've got like standard operating practices that are people supposed to be following, to make sure that we don't get like gasoline and diesel mixed in with your stormwater, make sure that people are following them. Communicate problems with your inspector. Again, you don't want to let stuff fester until it becomes a big issue. We can oftentimes get you in contact with resources and stuff to help you with that. Have a plan to designate a backup environmental contact if needed, if we show up to do an inspection. Know your processes, including discharges and waste and permits that you have. Be honest, don't speculate. If you don't know, speak up and fess up and say you don't know, and you'll have to get back to us with some additional information. Retain documents to demonstrate compliance and keep them organized. Certain records have to be maintained for a number of years. You want to make sure that you're following those. And if found, address violations in a timely manner. And with that, I think we can see about taking some questions.
Thanks, John. Yeah, so we're now going to answer some questions submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the question pane. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible, but if we do not get to your question during the Q&A portion, we will reach out to you via email following today's session. All right, so our first question we have is, let's see, my permit as issued final has monitoring and record keeping requirements outlined in the permit. Are there times where I don't have to keep these records?
A good rule of thumb is, I know with our checklists and stuff that we follow with our inspections, many of our records you do want to keep for like 3 to 5 years worth at least. It's kind of recommend that you probably keep them back further if you can, unless space kind of becomes an issue. But you do want to kind of hang on to records for roughly that time period for most things. If there is something in particular that you are curious on how long you need to keep records for, reach out to your inspector within, at your district office and ask them, and they can research that and let you know the specifics on that. Many times, like I said, they are specified within the rules of, how long you need to keep things like your monthly report data, your data from your labs and stuff that supports your monthly EDMR submissions. So it's going to kind of vary depending upon what data that you're speaking to.
Great, thanks, John. Mm-hmm. Next up, can I direct my potable water treatment system backwash to a stormwater drain?
No. That is something that I have come across on many sites. If you have that backwash will have a lot of total dissolved solids in it, like chlorides and salts and stuff in it, that need to be collected and managed and disposed of as an industrial wastewater. I would kind of reach out and speak with your Ohio EPA inspector and your permit writer for your specific facility that has that. Because many times you don't want to just simply plummet to the headworks of your wastewater treatment plant, because depending upon the concentration of that backwash or that brine material, it could be harmful to the biology of the wastewater treatment plant. So, you're going to definitely want to kind of speak with your inspector on that, but it should not be just simply discharged out to the stormwater system.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, great. Next, if I sample more often than my NPDES permit requires, can I only report the best results?
No. If you a requirement of your NPDES permit is if you sampled it and you used a method that is approved in 40 CFR 136, then you are obligated to report that. So if you choose to sample more frequently than what your permit requires, you are obligated to report that on your monthly EDMRs.
Great. Let's see. Do you need to print EDMRs each month, or can you use Ohio EPA system for storage?
I would imagine the legal answer is that you could probably use Ohio EPA's e-business center to do that. Although from a practical standpoint, I'm sure that we have all had our glitches with the Ohio EPA e-business system and the EDMR. And so if it were me as an operator or a EH&S person at an industrial facility, I would see about printing them off just in case something glitches with the state's electronic system.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Always better to be safe than sorry. Let's see. What are some common program violations you see during a surface water inspection?
Well, I did kind of cover that in my presentation. There, common ones oftentimes are too is like the non-contact cooling water. People think that just it goes through a cooling tower and it can just simply discharge out to waters of the state and it doesn't need an NPDES permit. That's a common one that is discharging something without an NPDES permit. And other common ones are things like water system backwashes that are just plumbed to the storm sewer system. That needs an NPDES permit. with it. Any changes if you end up, you can do swapping out equipment for like and kind, exactly what you had before, that could be considered operation and maintenance. But if you're doing some type of different type of treatment process that you're adding to your treatment process, that typically requires a permit to install. Another common one also too is sanitary sewers within a facility complex where you're connecting more than one building to it. It's no longer considered a service lateral. It's considered a sewer, and a sewer needs a permit to install.
Great. A few more coming in. Is it required in the permit to report electronically on eBiz, or unless stated in the permit, record retention is okay?
Well, like I say, we now do require that under very rare circumstances can you submit a paper, the old 4,500 paper forms to Ohio EPA. The expectation is that unless there are some really extenuating circumstances, that you do report your data electronically to Ohio EPA through the Ohio EPA e-business system. And then, like I said, as far as like the records retention, it does tend to vary. I know with things like sludge records and stuff, those tend to go back like at least like 3 to 5 years. So it's important that you maintain those records someplace. Not that they have to be right available as we speak. You do want to keep a certain amount of records, usually like the last year or two, you want to have readily available. But if you have like off-site document storage or something like that, you can keep the older records someplace else, but you need to be able to get to them and to produce them within a reasonable amount of time following inspection.
Mm-hmm. Who is required to have annual stormwater training?
It's going to be essentially the key employees that are tasked with actually carrying out the elements of your stormwater pollution prevention plan. So, if you have employees that are receiving materials where you're connecting like tanker vehicles to outside storage hoppers or outside storage silos. If you have people that are fueling vehicles, and you have on-site fueling things, then you do want to make sure that you are capturing those employees in your annual training. The way I kind of have generally looked at it is most businesses usually have a number of health and safety trainings that they're doing throughout the year to satisfy Bureau of Workmen's Compensation and OSHA and that type of thing. And you just kind of want to make sure that the topic of one of those health and safety meetings that you guys are having on a fairly regular basis involves the stormwater pollution prevention plan and the stormwater program. And I do kind of want to do a pinch hit for our folks in OCAP. I don't know what the other districts are doing, but I know in our district up here in Northeast, our OCAP folks had used kind of some grant money to essentially establish a library of some training modules for compliance with industrial stormwater. And those resources are available to the public, and you can check them out essentially like a library book. So if you're interested in that, I would see about reaching out to the OCAP number or contacting the district office and asking for one of our OCAP staff.
Great, yes. And with that, we will answer one more question and then we'll continue on. Our last question, what are the most important things to keep in mind when getting ready for a surface water inspection?
Probably one of the most important things to kind of keep in mind is knowing your process, knowing your wastes, knowing what your authorizing documents are and what they require, and knowing where the records are, the supporting documentation that your authorizing documents require you to keep, where those are kept, and that both you and the backup person know where that information is kept.
Great, thanks, John. And just a reminder that if you do have questions as we finish up here, please do feel free to chat them in and we will reach out to you after the webinar. But before we end today's session, I'd like to go over a couple more items. First, we would like to point your attention to another one of today's environmental fun facts. Want to catch up on a session you missed? Ohio EPA's YouTube channel houses recordings of past webinars and trainings. All sessions from our 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference will be uploaded on our YouTube channel a few weeks after the conference if you missed a session or want to rewatch one you attended. You can scan the QR code on this slide to go to our YouTube channel and search for past webinars and trainings. And lastly, Ohio EPA hosts a series of webinars throughout the year on a variety of environmental topics. This slide provides information on how to register for these upcoming webinars, where to find recordings of previous webinars, and how to sign up to receive notifications of upcoming webinars through our Ohio EPA Customer Support Center. Thank you again, John, for your great presentation, and thank you to our audience for attending this 2022 Virtual Compliance Assistance Conference session. Have a great day.